Hey, it's Mike from the Life in Attleboro podcast. Our first ever sponsor, Confidence Fitness, has an unbelievable offer for you. 3 free workouts with absolutely nothing to lose. You'll also get an in-body scan to measure your current body composition, and you'll get their brand new meal prep checklist. All of those things completely free. You cannot beat it. All you have to do is go to lifeinattleboro.com, and you'll see the link right there on our homepage. I'll also include the link in the show notes of this episode. Confidence Fitness is located at 453 South Main Street. Confidence Fitness. Strength for life, strength for sports. And now, on to the show. You are listening to the Life in Attleboro podcast, where we interview the city's most interesting people who are making a positive difference in our community. Hey everyone, I'm the host of the Life in Attleboro podcast, Mike Sullivan. There's an effort to bring one of Attleboro's great theaters back to life. The Union Theater was thriving in the roaring 20s and beyond, and now a special group of people are on a mission to bring it back to its glory days. There is so much unique history at this building, and it is so close to beginning a new chapter. Enjoy episode 38 of the Life in Attleboro podcast. Okay, joining me now is Jennifer Keating and Scott Winkler. Jennifer is leading the effort to bring the Union Theater back to life, and Scott is actually the architect of this project, and he's going to be able to provide some really cool insight for us, so I'm excited for this interview. Jennifer and Scott, I'd like to thank you, first of all, for being a guest on the Life in Attleboro podcast.
We're glad to be here.
Sure. It is my honor. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you, actually. So, I'd like to start from the beginning here. Can you please share a little bit of the theater's history with us?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually a really interesting history. The building was constructed around 1925, and it actually wasn't built to be a theater. It was meant to be an industrial building, a manufacturing space with some retail around it. And so the manufacturing space was in the middle of the building, and then there was retail around it. And they opened around 1925, had some success with the retail, but they couldn't ever rent out the industrial space. And so around 1927, a group of businessmen went to the owners of the building and convinced them they wanted to build a theater in that empty space. And so they actually converted an empty box meant for industrial use into what we see now today as the Union Theater. That opened in April 28th, 1928. There's actually a great article in the newspaper that we have a copy of that talks about all the people that worked on it, all the companies, how proud they were of their part in building this theater. Some pictures, some old pictures of the building that are a bit hard to read, but they're there. And a great bit of information about the developers in the process. And it was opened 1928. Like many theaters in that era, it was a vaudeville theater. And what that means is they weren't sure if this movie thing was going to take off. And so they actually built a performing arts space that had a small stage. And what would happen is vaudeville performers from all over the country would just travel around the region. They would do any number of shows, what we see today as America's Got Talent, essentially. And people would pay a price, usually a nickel, to go into the building and stay as long as they wanted for the day. And they would see a rolling performances from these vaudeville performers and these short movies in between some of the performers. Over time, the movies took off, as we all know, and the need for vaudeville performers diminished. And so these old theaters have these small stages, and those ultimately had no use, and the screens, the movie screen, became the main use of the building. And so in the 1940s, we actually see them updating the theater a little bit. So that's probably around the time they stopped with the vaudeville performances and focused solely on movies. They essentially modernized the theater a little bit. And what they did is they put in the ticket booth we see today, more of a Art Deco style building with some neon over the marquee, updated the seating. So the 1928 seats, many of them were replaced with 1940 seats. And they added air conditioning, which the building didn't have when it was constructed, and showed movies full time. As if you know the history of the movie theater industry, by the 1980s, the idea of showing one movie at a time was just not physically possible, not financially viable for businesses. And so they, like many theaters back then, made a triplex out of it. They made 3 theaters out of one space, and they did that by dividing the first floor in half and making 2 narrow, long theaters. And then they took the balcony and built a wall at the front of the balcony and turned the old balcony into a 3rd theater. And that's how it operated in the 80s and 90s until it closed in the late 90s. Three theaters ultimately was not enough either for the movie theater industry. And we see that today where I think the smallest theater I see that's functioning is about 12 to 14 screens. That's how the building sat for a number of years. And the Friedmans, Jim Friedman, whose father ran a bar there for years in one of those old retail spaces, had bought the building along more recently after it closed, and he made some efforts to get the building reopened for live performance. And so he ran a few different performances over the years. And ultimately, that's a business that's really difficult as a freestanding thing. And he had a restaurant, a successful restaurant in town he was also running. And so he closed it, but he's essentially maintained the building and been looking for a way to see it get reused. And I got to know Jim in 2007 when I first came to town, moved here into Attleboro from Providence, and I've been working with him ever since to try and help him find a use and a way to convert the building into something, ideally a performance space of some kind.
Wow. Thank you for that very in-depth look at the history of the theater. That's really cool. So you just answered this, or at least I can feel the answer through the screen here, but why did you decide to take on this effort with Jennifer and the rest of the team as far as bringing the Union Theater back to life?
Sure. Yeah. No, I work on a lot of theaters in the area. I actually do all the work at the Providence
Oh,
Performing Arts
cool.
Center and the Veterans Auditorium in Providence, some stuff up in the Boston area. I love theaters. It's my favorite building type. And that's one of the reasons as an Attleboro resident, I've been trying to help see that building reopen. And so when Jennifer and her group, came to the Friedmans with the idea of reopening it, Jim said, you should talk to Scott. I measured the building years ago with my son, who's now 20, and I know the building really well, and very familiar with theaters and performing arts centers. So it was a great fit, and I enjoy working with Jen. I actually knew her from Cub
Oh,
Scouts from
wow.
years
Yes,
ago.
That's
So
a fun fact.
which total
yeah.
coincidence. They said they had an architect already on the project. And I was told by some helpful people that, oh, you got to be careful. If an architect's already working on it, maybe you don't want that architect. And I meet him and it's Scott. I'm like, oh, we
That's
go
awesome.
way back.
That's
Okay.
great. I love it. So, Jennifer, you are the director of Illuminate, which is the nonprofit running the Union Theater Revival campaign. When you first told me about the campaign, you mentioned hearing the stories from people who experienced the original Union Theater back in the day. Do you recall any?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming these stories provided some extra motivation for you to bring this theater back to life.
Yeah, it's really been one of my favorite things about running this campaign. I moved to Attleboro in about 2002. I raised my three kids here.
Nice.
They're 19, 17, and 15 now, so getting older, but they've grown up here in Attleboro. The whole time that we have been here, so I moved in 2002, I think that's about when the theater closed.
Okay.
I heard rumors that there was a theater there, and I would drive by, and it's like you can see the marquee, but it doesn't really look like a theater from the outside, and that's probably because what Scott said, it was originally built as a warehouse.
Right.
It doesn't have that grand performing arts center vibe going for it.
Sure.
But yeah, so we got connected to the Union Theater through Mass Development. Mass Development has been investing a lot into Attleboro the past 3 years with the TDI program. And they knew about us. We've been around 12 years. We've been doing free performance art in Cuddy Court. We've been going to the library, Capron Park Zoo. And they really liked, the Friedmans really liked us because we weren't just doing shows. We were doing classes. Like the building would be used all day. It wouldn't just be like a couple performances a year. So yeah, we get connected with them, and one of the first things we started doing after we cleaned it up a little bit was to run some tours.
Okay.
Because as soon as I walked in, I was completely amazed. It is not falling apart. Like Scott said, the Friedmans had been taking care of it over the years, like wrapping their arms around it and not letting it fall apart. So anyone can walk in right now and you can see it is this close. It needs a few major things like HVAC. That's a major thing. But the seats are great. There's fire. The fire is okay. It just needs a couple of things and the buildings could be open for business. We started giving these tours as a way to build just awareness for the theater that it's here, it's in your neighborhood. And the people on the tours would come in and I can't even tell you how many stories I have of people having their first kiss there.
Oh, wow. That's
Or
fun.
they proposed there, an engagement. They talk about the different movies they saw there and the pencil boxes they got when they were kids. The owner, Roxy Peachy, would hand out these pencil boxes to kids, and it was just special to them. And what really strikes me about all of that, and what I tell people, is when I go to Showcase movie theater and watch a movie, I don't leave feeling like it was just a second home. Like I don't go there, oh, this is the place that people know me and my kids get a pencil box on the way out. It's not, I don't have any attachment to the Showcase Theater.
Right.
But it seems that everybody that went to the Union Theater, it was more than just seeing a movie. It was an experience. It was being part of community. And that's what we're hoping to bring back more than anything. A place where you're not just going and making a transaction, you're going and you're meeting people and laughing together. And it doesn't matter who you are, everybody can sit next to each other and enjoy a movie or comedy show or theater performance. And then pour out into the downtown and visit all the restaurants, right?
Right, exactly. So, Jennifer, you just touched on this, but this is really all about the feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself. Like, it's what keeps people coming back, that feeling of community. That is really cool. And you mentioned the seats were in good shape. How many seats are in there ish?
They're currently probably around
Really?
500 in the balcony. There's actually remnants. There's some of the original seats
Wow.
from 1928 up in the balcony, and then there's quite a few of the 1950 seats in various locations, not all of them installed. Actually, our plan is to redo the seats eventually, and we'll have 500 seats on the main
Wow.
level and another 50 or 60 in the
Wow.
balcony.
I did not expect it to be that many. That's really cool. All right, so we are going to will this to happen. The Union Theater is coming back to life. So, Scott, once the theater does come back to life, what can the people of Attleboro expect to see inside? What kind of performances are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I think buildings like this, they don't really make money, like I said, as first floor movie houses anymore. So it's really important to have a diverse range of performances and entertainment types. So certainly they have projectors, and in fact, they just recently acquired some projectors from a theater in Providence that was closing, the Columbus. And so they'll have still the ability to show movies, and those will be maybe art films, but more likely second run movies, classic movies, things that are still on film, because as you might know, they don't actually make film
Right.
anymore. They've all been digitized, but they'll have the ability to show movies, to show things, maybe a little film festival, things like that. They'll certainly have, one of the goals is to take the vaudeville stage and ultimately expand it a little bit. So we have a good sized stage, and there'll be dressing rooms to support that, so we can have performances, so musical performances, theater and dance performances. And then Jen will tell you more about her organization, but they also run a theater school or a performing arts school. So they'll be teaching things in the building, both on the stage, certainly relative to performances, but other classes they teach will be up in part of the balcony that we're going to turn into 3 classrooms. And so it'll have a lot of activity during the day. It's also a place where the city could have a big meeting, right? They want to have a meeting about a big project in Attleboro, or a business wants to have some type of meeting or seminar. Maybe there's a little conference coming through town. It's a space that'll be used for a lot of different things, and the key with these buildings is to give them lots of uses.
Absolutely. And it sounds like that's going to make for a very unique experience no matter what you go for. So you touch on this, Scott, but Jennifer, this is for you. I understand you do a lot for the children who are interested in theater and the performing arts. Can you please share?
So Illuminate has been around for 12 years, and if people in Attleboro are still hearing about us, it's because we've been catering to the homeschooling community for the first 8 years or so, and then we had COVID, and
Yeah.
so after that we have introduced after school programming, but it's been a little slow to start. I think once we're at the Union Theater, we'll be able to be 5 days a week and offer lots of stuff. And what makes us different from other theater companies is that we're not just doing shows. A lot of other theater companies, they just have their season, which is great. That's fine. They're doing their thing. We are doing a couple shows a year, but we're also running stagecraft classes, and the kids are learning about light design and set design and even able to graduate with a certificate that allows them to work on Broadway. We have a choir. We have a 60-person choir that is actually singing for the Providence Bruins on Friday. We have dance classes. We have everything, sewing, creative writing. And so for Illuminate, we'll be bringing all of that to the Union Theater. And when we're not there, those classrooms can be used for so much more. Like what Scott was saying, I've been looking at some other programming at like Lexington Church. I don't remember what the name is, but I follow them because they currently have speakers come in from NPR, or they have a lot of speakers come in to do poetry workshops or learn how to grow a plant workshops. Wow. And they'll have hundreds of people show up because it's somebody from YouTube or it's somebody that's got a following on a podcast. So I've already been in touch with some of these people to like, how do you get them? How do you get these speakers to come in and do workshops? That's something that I think people haven't been understanding, that it's not just going to be Illuminate. It's going to be so much more for Attleboro and, beyond.
Right. And that kind of leads me to my last question here. So, Scott, I'll start with you. Is there anything else that you'd like the people of Attleboro to know about this campaign to bring the Union Theater back to life?
I think spaces like this are really important to a vibrant community. We have people moving downtown. There's been people living downtown. You probably know there's new buildings and old buildings being redone to have more living downtown. We have people that are looking to do things. The restaurants that are downtown do really well. And there's always a need for more of that, believe it or not. Restaurateurs will tell you we want more restaurants around us because people don't always want to go to the same place. And something like this can really add to that, right? It can help the businesses downtown, the restaurants, and support type things. And it's just a great opportunity to have something to do in a community and something to connect with. So I really hope this happens. I've seen the success. The PPAC's a much bigger theater, but it really is, for all of Rhode Island, counts on that, and they all use it. And I could see this really being something like that for the city of Attleboro.
Amen to that.
Yeah, we're like live concerts, the bands that could come up from Providence. We're 15 minutes from Providence, right across from the train station. Right. There's so much potential. And a big thing that we need right now really is just for people to spread the word. Mm-hmm. It's been a year. We've raised $650,000 in a year, which is pretty great. Yeah. We're about $150,000 away from our phase 1 goal, which is basically phase 1 is just to get the doors open. Okay. Phase 2, when the rest happens. Okay. So we're not too far. Like $150,000 is a lot, but if we raise $650,000 in less than a year, I think we can do this. So the best way to help out right now is to spread the word, to get people aware of this. Come on a tour, bring your group, if you have a garden club that you're hanging out with, we'd love to bring them on a tour of the theater. It's so much fun. And we tend to see a lot of donations come in after that because people get it. Once you're in there, you get it.
Absolutely. Jennifer Keating and Scott Winkler, you are on a mission that I can get behind personally, and I hope everyone in the city does too. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Life in Attleboro podcast, and I cannot wait to see you both at the Union Theater.
And you too.
Thanks.
It would be so cool to see the Union Theater come back to life, and it sounds like it'll be a very unique experience for sure. If you'd like to make a donation or learn more about the Revival campaign, you can find the link in the show notes of this episode. Hey, I want to tell you about our new sponsor, Hoban Accounting Services. If you're a small business owner, you know how much of a hassle it can be to keep track of every penny earned and every penny spent. But thankfully, Hoban Accounting Services is on a mission to heal your headaches and fizzle your frustration when it comes to crunching those pesky numbers. Hoban Accounting Services has helped local businesses for more than 7 years. That's when Nicole Hoban, a proud mother of twin girls, launched her business. She's a QuickBooks Pro Advisor with tons of awards to her name. If you mention the Life in Attleboro podcast, you'll get 10% off for your first 6 months. If you'd like to support a small business owner in our city, just tap the link in the show notes of this episode and Nicole will be in touch. Hoban Accounting Services. A great bookkeeper should be an asset, not an expense. Have you signed up for the Life in Attleboro email list? If not, you're missing out on exclusive benefits, including early access to every new podcast episode, special savings at Attleboro restaurants and businesses, behind-the-scenes video and insight, and you'll stay in the know about cool events in our great city. Just go to lifeinattleboro.com, and you'll see the sign-up display right there on the homepage. You'll also see the sign-up button at the top of our Life in Attleboro Facebook page. And if you know someone who would make a great guest on our podcast, please shoot us an email at lifeinattleboro@gmail.com. Life in Attleboro is a great thing. Support our community, promote positivity, and make a stranger smile. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Life in Attleboro podcast.